Subscribe to Man Told for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Light rain fell as the hotel's revolving door swung open. Laura stepped out. Her hair was damp. A drop of water slid down her cheek, blending into the smile she tilted toward the man beside her. He was tall, in a dark suit, carrying the leather suitcase I gave her for her birthday last year. Her laugh slipped through the rain, thin as a thread, yet sharp enough to cut through my wet coat and land straight in my chest. She pulled the blue scarf tighter around her neck, the one I bought on my first business trip after we got married. A faint trace of her perfume drifted with the wind, mingling with the cold rain and the smell of exhaust. I stood under the awning across the street, gripping the handle of my umbrella so hard. My knuckles turned white. My shoes were soaked through, icy cold, but I barely felt it. The real chill was seeping from my chest outward. They stopped in front of a waiting luxury car. He opened the door, his hand brushing the small of her back, so natural, like he'd done it hundreds of times. She didn't pull away. She just looked at him, smiled, and stepped inside. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Laura. "I'll be late. Emergency meeting." I didn't open the umbrella, didn't cross the street, didn't call her name. I just stood there, letting the rain wash away everything I'd planned for tomorrow. Our 10th anniversary trip, 2 round-trip tickets to Florida, a beachfront resort room. The car turned off the street, its taillights smearing red in the rain. I stayed where I was, listening to the steady rhythm of raindrops on my shoulders, each one sinking past my skin, deep into bone. That night, I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly until I ended up on a deserted street. I slept in the driver's seat, surrounded by the smell of old leather and the sound of wind hissing through the window cracks. Not because I had nowhere to go, but because I couldn't walk into a house where every wall still whispered her name. The rain that night didn't drench me. It only washed away the illusion that Laura was still mine. And I knew, from that moment on, I'd never again be the man she once knew. I'm Joe Wills, 38, a construction engineer. I've spent my life around concrete and steel. Yet I live in a quiet little town in northern Ohio. My house isn't big, just a 2-story place with a wooden porch and a white fence. But I've spent every weekend making it better. I met Laura 12 years ago at the opening ceremony of a downtown project. Back then, she was a marketing rep, long hair, bright eyes, and a way of making anyone laugh. 6 months later, I proposed to her in the Riverside Park, where we used to sit, eating burgers we grabbed on the go. 10 years of marriage went by. We had a daughter, Emily. She's 8, blue eyes like her mom, quiet like me. In the mornings, I'd make Laura a latte, set it next to the little pastry she liked. Some days, she'd drink it. Some days, it would still be there when I came home from the site, stone cold. In the afternoons, Emily would run to the door when she heard my pickup pull in. She'd hug me tight, but her eyes would scan the room, looking for her mom. I'd tell her, "She's busy. She'll be home soon." Most nights, that became my usual line. Laura said her new job was more demanding, more difficult clients. She'd leave the table to take calls out on the porch, her voice lowered, like she didn't want me to hear. New dresses started showing up in the closet, elegant, sophisticated, but I never once saw her wear them when she was with us. Once, I came home early with her favorite strawberry shortcake. The living room was dark, only the sound of keys tapping in the kitchen. Laura was on her laptop. She didn't look up when I set the box in front of her. "Just leave it there," she said, eyes still on the screen. I stood there for a few seconds, feeling like I'd just brought a gift to a stranger. We used to watch movies together at night. Now, it was always, "I have to check a contract," or "I need to call a client." The space between us was growing. When I tried to start a conversation, the answer was usually, "Yeah," or "later." I didn't suspect anything, yet. But some nights, when I heard the ping of a text message from her phone on the nightstand, I realized I didn't really know the woman lying next to me anymore. I remembered how, a few years back, Laura would curl up on the couch beside me, telling stories about her coworkers, coming up with crazy summer trip ideas. She laughed so much back then. I thought, Nothing in the world could quiet her. Lately, when I asked, "How was your day?" the answer was, "Same as usual, or I'm tired. We'll talk tomorrow." Her eyes passed over me, like I was just passing through a stranger's house. Emily started drawing family pictures with only two people, her and me. When I asked why, she smiled awkwardly. "Mom's always busy. I don't remember when she's home." One night, she held up a perfect score test, waiting for her mom to get home so she could show her. But she fell asleep on the sofa instead. I covered her with a blanket, held the paper that still smelled faintly of pencil, and quietly put it in my desk drawer. Laura kept saying her job needed flexibility. More calls taken out on the porch, voice low, followed by a faint laugh. More dresses in the closet, luxurious, tailored, never worn around us. Another time, I came home early again, with her favorite cake. The living room, dark. The glow of her laptop in the kitchen, her fingers typing. She didn't look up. "Just leave it," she said, eyes fixed on the screen. I stood there, hearing the rain outside the window, feeling like I'd just brought dessert to someone who no longer belonged in my story. Then came the night, close to midnight, when I heard the garage door. I went downstairs. Laura was slipping off her coat, setting her bag on the chair. She startled when she saw me, then quickly said, "The client kept me for dinner, so I'm late." I nodded, didn't ask more. But as she walked past, I caught the scent of her perfume, stronger than usual, and on the collar of her blouse, a smear of wine-red lipstick. Not her color? I stood there, my hand on the stair rail, feeling the blood drain from my face, cold, even though the garage still held the heat of the engine. In my head, a question I couldn't bring myself to answer. If this all falls apart, how will Emily see me? That night, I lay with my back to her, staring at the lamplight casting shadows on the wall, my heart beating slow and heavy. I knew I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and it would only take one more gust of wind to send me over. That morning, I left the site earlier than usual. Late autumn sun spilled gold over the road that led home. I thought about stopping for ingredients to make the beef stew Laura loved. Maybe we could have dinner together. It had been a long time since we had a real one. When I pulled into the driveway, Laura's sedan wasn't there. Emily was at school. The house was unusually quiet. I stepped inside and saw it right away, an empty spot on the shoe rack. The beige heels Laura only wore on special occasions were gone. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Room 412. "Come early." I froze. My fingers trembled, a thin film of sweat on my skin, even though the morning air was cold. Seconds later, the message was deleted, as if it had never existed. But I'd seen it, clear as day. I walked into the garage, started the truck without thinking. The sound of the engine in the enclosed space rattled in my skull. By the time I realized I was heading toward downtown, I knew something inside me was pulling me there, while another part of me prayed I was wrong. The hotel appeared on the corner. I parked a block away, hands locked around the steering wheel, the leather damp with sweat. My heart thudded fast, hard, the blood pounding in my temples. I kept my eyes on the revolving door. Every time I saw someone who looked like Laura, my chest tightened. And then she appeared. Long brown hair, a square neck blue dress, the new one I'd seen hanging in the closet, but never on her at home. She walked beside a tall man in a gray suit. His steps were slow, certain. They talked. Laura tilted her head and laughed. That laugh. I'd heard it in the summer of 2015, standing with her on Clearwater Beach, the wind in her hair. This time, there was no wind, no ocean, and the smile wasn't for me. They stepped into the revolving door. Her hand brushed his arm, small, casual, but enough to make the ground tilt beneath me. I gripped the wheel so hard, I felt like if I let go, I'd fall into something bottomless. Almost an hour later, they came out. Laura was holding a white envelope. He leaned down, said something that made her laugh again. The sound carried through the cold air, sharp as a winter gust. They split in the parking lot. Laura walked to her sedan, he to a black SUV. As he opened the door, I saw the logo, silver, with a blue stripe, on the side. It was the company I worked for. I didn't know his name, but now I knew. We moved in the same world, which meant I'd find him. I stayed in the truck, eyes fixed on the SUV. Crawford and Sons. The sun glinted off the logo. My heart skipped. They were our strategic partner, and the Riverbend Bridge project was where our paths had crossed, which meant the man who had just taken Laura's smile wasn't a stranger. I might have shaken his hand, sat across from him in a meeting, talking about steel and concrete, while he hid something else behind his back. I pulled up the company directory. Minutes later, his face appeared on my phone. Mark Reynolds, project director, gray suit, perfect smile. But the mark in my head wasn't the profile photo. It was him, standing next to Laura, leaning in to make her laugh. That night, Laura came home late. I was at the table. The beef stew was cold. The steam had been gone for hours, just like the warmth between us. She slipped off her coat, set down her bag, and smiled faintly. Sorry, emergency meeting. The clink of cutlery on porcelain was sharp, like a thin blade. I looked at her for a long time. Wanted to ask, was it in room 412? But the words stayed in my throat, heavy as stone. In the days that followed, I watched. Laura's schedule matched Mark's with surgical precision. She met clients exactly when he stepped out for partner meetings. Two harmless phrases, but side by side, they ticked down like the hands of a clock on a bomb inside my chest. Friday afternoon, Laura said she'd be late for a conference prep. I parked at the cafe across from her office. At 6:20, they walked out, not colleagues making small talk. The space between them, barely an arm's length. One more step, and it would have been an embrace. I left before they saw me. Back home, I didn't go in right away. I sat in the truck outside the garage, listening to the ticking of my watch, each one like a tap against my ribs, counting down to the moment I'd have to face the truth. That night, Laura slept soundly. I lay still, eyes open, watching the warm glow of the lamp stretch across the wall. I thought about Emily. This house, Laura's smile, meant for someone else. It felt like holding sand in my hands. The tighter I gripped, the faster it slipped away. Then, in the stillness, a soft ding. Laura's phone lit up on the nightstand. The message was clear. I'll miss you tonight. The blue glow fell across her sleeping face, and I knew we had crossed a line we would never come back from. I didn't sleep after seeing that message. Every time I closed my eyes, the words, "I'll miss you tonight," lit up in my mind, bright and sharp, like headlights cutting straight into my eyes in the dark. I tossed and turned, listening to the ticking of the wall clock, each one like a tap against my temple. The next morning, Laura woke earlier than usual. She chose the beige heels, the wine-red lipstick, the same shade I'd seen on her collar the other night. When she bent to fasten the straps, she placed her phone face down. I asked, "Big day." She looked up, gave a quick smile. "Yeah, big conference." The door closed, leaving the kitchen cold. The coffee I made for her cooled quickly, like the warmth had no intention of staying. I stirred without thinking. The spoon hit the bottom of the cup again and again, until the coffee spilled over the table. I hadn't realized I'd been stirring that long. All day at the site, I couldn't focus. The sound of drills, steel clashing, faded into the background. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, heart racing like I'd heard a fire alarm. That night, Laura came home late. Emily was already asleep. She hung up her coat, changed into something else, left the dress and heels in the bedroom. When she came back out, her eyes passed over me so quickly I couldn't read a thing. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Fine. Tiring, but smooth," she said, reaching for a glass. We ate in the sound of cutlery tapping against plates, cold and dry, like the stew that had been sitting for hours. When she went to shower, I opened her bag. Inside, a white envelope, just like the one I'd seen at the hotel. My heart thudded. I pulled it out. Inside, Crawford and Sons documents. Just paper. But it didn't feel like just paper. In the days that followed, I paid closer attention. Laura changed her ringtone, took calls outside whenever they were private. Her schedule and Mark's matched too perfectly to be chance. One afternoon, at work, I got a text from an unknown number. "I think you should know this." Attached, a photo. Laura and Mark standing close in the hotel lobby. Her eyes on him, her smile untouched, whole. The same as it used to be with me. I stared at the photo until the screen went black. I knew I'd gone too far to turn back. I saved it to a locked folder, like storing evidence. Even though every time I opened it, I cut myself all over again. That night, I reheated the stew, lit a few candles, hoping maybe dinner could fix something. Laura walked in, froze for a moment, then gave a tired smile. "Looks nice, but I have a few calls to make." She stepped out to the back porch. I waited. The candles burned low, wax running in thin white streams. "Let's take Emily to the lake this weekend," I said when she came back in. "We'll see." The words dropped onto the table like a pebble. Small, but heavy. The next day, I called Nate, an engineer at Crawford. His voice dropped. "Word is, Mark's seeing someone in events." Gorgeous. I forced a laugh. My hand clenched so tight, my pen cracked. At lunch, an email from Mark popped up. Private review. Location to be confirmed. No Laura in the recipient list. But there was an unfamiliar email address. I looked it up. Some small PR firm. The receptionist gave a curt answer and hung up. It felt like every door closed before I could look inside. That night, I asked her straight, "What's going on between you and Mark?" She froze, then said, "That photo was just us talking work. That text, just a coworker joking. Too neat, too clean, to be the whole truth." In my head, two voices. Believe her. Don't be naive. When she went to bed, I gathered everything. Photos, schedules, emails, into one stack. It felt like framing steel for a building, knowing that when it was finished, it would collapse on me. Saturday afternoon, I took Emily to buy art supplies. She asked, "What if Mom's always busy?" I didn't answer. Turned on the defroster. Her drawings on the glass melted into drops, sliding down like erased memories. Back home, Laura was on the porch, phone pressed close, eyes scanning like she was checking for tails. When she saw me, she hung up quick, then said, "Let's have dinner out tonight. I want to talk." Small restaurant. Table by the window. She smiled more, asked about the site. The food had just arrived when her phone buzzed. She flipped it face down. Said she had to make a quick call. 3 minutes. 5. I stepped outside. The alley was empty. When I got home, the living room light was on, but the chair was empty. Near midnight, Laura walked in. I slid a white envelope toward her. Inside, the printed private review email with the updated schedule. Room 412, 8:30 p.m. Sunday. "That's work," she said. "I know," I replied. "And I'll be there. Because that's my work too." My phone rang. Unknown number. A deep male voice. Joe Wills. Advice: don't go. It's no place for family. Click. I looked at Laura. She looked at me. The clock ticked. Less than 24 hours before the door to room 412 opened. And when it closed, nothing would ever be the same again. Sunday came. Like time itself, wanted to drag me straight to the end. From the moment she woke up, Laura was different. She avoided my eyes, moved around the house like she was looking for something. Even she didn't know. Every time her phone buzzed, she grabbed it right away. Screen turned down when I got close. All day, I played with Emily, while listening to the ticking of the clock. At 8 p.m., I took her to her grandmother's, told her Mom and Dad had something to do. When I came back, Laura was standing by the door, bag over her shoulder, lipstick freshly touched up. "I'm going ahead. Need to prep some documents," she said. I nodded. Told her I'd follow later. Had to grab some blueprints first. The door closed. The sound of her engine faded. I sat for a minute, staring at the coffee cup on the table. Steam gone. Only a cold black ring left. I stood, grabbed my coat, took the envelope with the photos and the emails. On the way to the hotel, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You only get one chance to turn back." No name. No sign-off. I screenshotted it. Saved it. My grip on the wheel tightened until my knuckles went white. I killed the headlights as I pulled into the lot, parking in the far shadows. The pavement was wet. Neon lights flickered against dark patches. Between the rows of cars, I spotted Laura's plate. Not near the main entrance. At the far end, by a side door. I paused. The way you pause when you've just seen a piece that doesn't fit. Inside, the lobby was bright. Air conditioning blew cold against my face. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. Gray carpet. Dim yellow lights. the faintest trace of perfume in the air. Room numbers dropped. 420, 416, 412. Laughter drifted out from inside. Not loud, but enough to make my heart skip. My hand went to the door. It was cracked, just enough for light to spill out. I pushed. A soft click. The room was bright. On the table, an open bottle of red wine, 2 glasses. One still warm, the scent rising like faint smoke. Laura stood with her back to me, in a black dress I'd never seen before. Across from her, Mark, top button undone, his gaze steady. She turned, eyes wide, then lowering, like hope snuffed out. "Joe," she breathed. I looked at Mark. "This your kind of work?" He smirked. "Some contracts require a special kind of trust." I stepped forward, eyes locked on him. Laura moved between us. "It's not what you think." I smiled, barely. "Then what do you think I think?" Mark set his glass down. "Some parts of a project you're not in the position to understand." I placed the envelope on the table, spread out the photo and the email. "I understand enough to know what you two do after hours." Laura trembled, but didn't deny it. Her shoulders fell. "Joe, I'll tell you, but when I'm done, everything will change." Here, in room 412, I knew I was standing on the edge of something I'd never be able to come back from. And in the next 30 seconds, I'd know if I was holding on to a marriage or just a hollow shell. I stood still. Laura sank into a chair, like she'd just set down a weight, but didn't know where to put it. Mark leaned on the table, swirling his glass, eyes steady, almost daring me. "Joe," Laura began, voice hoarse, "I haven't slept with Mark, but I did something with him that if you knew, you'd never forgive." I stepped closer, one arm's length between us. "Say it." She hesitated. "The company's project didn't have enough funding. Mark found an investor, but they wanted something else in return. Not money. Information." Mark cut in, smiling to one side. "Just a few internal documents. Anyone would do it, if they wanted to survive in this business." I looked at him. "And Laura?" He shrugged. "She's the bridge. Investors trust women more. Trust people willing to cross lines." I turned to her. "Cross lines? From who? The company? Or me?" Her eyes were wet. "From everything. I thought I was helping us, but I let Mark use me as cover." My pulse pounded. I gripped the glass on the table. Red liquid swayed, spilled over the rim, dripping into the carpet like blood. Mark's voice dropped, low enough for only me to hear. "You never really knew her, Joe. Don't fool yourself." I stepped in, breathing the same air. "But I know she's not yours." My voice was low. The glass hit the table hard. Laura moved between us. "Stop. Joe, I'm sorry. I thought if you didn't know, you'd be safe. But now, none of us are safe anymore." I stepped back. "If you really wanted me safe, you'd have told me from the start." The air thickened. The hum of the AC felt like a slowing heartbeat. I picked up the envelope. Didn't look at either of them. "When you chose Mark instead of me, whether it was for work or anything else, you answered for both of us." The door to room 412 closed behind me. The click echoed. I walked down the hallway. The scent of wine and perfume still clung to me, like a reminder that I'd left. But part of me was still inside. In the elevator down, I opened my hand. A drop of red wine still stained my finger, spreading into a streak like blood. I wiped it off. The smell stayed. And I knew, when that hotel room door opened again tomorrow, it wouldn't be for me. And maybe I'd never come back. Night wind whipped my face as I stepped out of the hotel. The air was cold, but not enough to cool the burning in my chest. I drove like a shadow. When I stopped in front of my house, I realized I couldn't remember the road I'd just taken. The house was dark. I sat in the truck, staring through the living room window, the place that used to be the warmest corner of my life. Now, it was just an empty frame, streetlight bleeding pale gold across the walls. When I opened the door, the air smelled of old wood and cold coffee. I dropped my coat, tossed my keys on the table. The morning's coffee cup was still there, a thick black ring at the bottom, cold as this marriage. My phone buzzed. Text from Laura. "Joe, please, don't tell anyone. I'll explain everything. Just give me a chance." I let the screen glow for a few seconds, then shut it off. Didn't reply. That night, I sat in the dark, listened to the wind whistling through the cracks, and the clock ticking its dry, steady beat. each tick reminding me of the distance growing between us, one I wasn't sure could ever be closed. The next morning, I got to the site early. Nate looked like he wanted to ask something, but didn't when he saw my face. I worked like a machine, measure, sign, give orders, but every hammer strike, every drill, sounded like nails going into an ending. Mid-morning, Mark showed up. "Joe, we need to talk." Without looking up, I said, "We've talked enough." He pulled a chair, sat across from me. "If you want a quiet life, let this go. Stir this up, and it's not just me and Laura losing our jobs. You too." I looked him in the eye. "You afraid of losing your job? Or losing her?" He smiled, barely. "You never really had her?" That cut. I stood, leaned close. "Maybe, but I know one thing. You'll never have her whole. Not even in work." That afternoon, Laura called. I let it ring out. She left a voicemail. "Joe, I've pulled out of the project. I'm done being involved. But Mark, he won't let it go. Be careful." That night, sitting by Emily's bed, listening to her breathing steady, I realized no matter what happened between Laura and me, I had to stand firm for her. But deep down, I knew my next meeting with Laura wouldn't just be to say goodbye, because I'd just gotten an anonymous text. "She hasn't told you everything." That line, "she hasn't told you everything," stuck in my mind like a splinter. All night, every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark in room 412, smirking, and Laura, head down. The next morning, I texted her. 7 p. Old cafe. I need the rest of the truth. She replied faster than I expected. "I'll be there." That cafe sat on a small street corner. Its warm yellow light spilled outside, but inside, the air smelled of bitter coffee, and the clink of spoons on porcelain was sharp and dry. We'd sat there in our early days, splitting one dessert because our wallets were empty. I got there first, chose a table by the wall. The light angled down, casting a long shadow across the table. When Laura walked in, the little bell over the door rang softly. She wore a dark sweater. No makeup. Her face was tired. She sat, fingers laced together. "Joe, I cut in." "Who sent that text?" She blinked. "What text?" I leaned forward, kept my voice low. "She hasn't told you everything. Is there something else you haven't told me?" Laura looked down at her untouched coffee. Steam fogged her glasses. Her voice was so quiet, it sounded like she didn't want herself to hear it. "Mark doesn't just want the contract. He has files on your father's case." My chest tightened. I remembered being 12, standing in the courthouse hallway, watching reporters swarm my dad, camera flashes going off. He kept his head down, one hand gripping my shoulder, but I could feel his shaking. "And you knew?" I asked. Each word heavy. Laura swallowed. "I knew." I stayed quiet, because I thought if you didn't know, you wouldn't risk going after Marky. I joined the project, just to get his promise he'd return the files. Her voice cracked at the end. "I was wrong, Joe. I just wanted to protect you. And keep the family." I stared at her, hurt and angry at once. Protect me, by keeping me in the dark. Outside, rain began to fall. Drops slid down the cafe window, like memories washing away. "Laura," I said, my voice low, "I don't know if there's anything left to save. But if Mark touches my father, I won't just sit here." She gripped my hand, her fingers ice cold. "Don't lose everything for revenge." I pulled my hand back, not out of anger, but because I knew if I held it longer, I'd soften. I stood, left a bill by the untouched coffee. Outside, rain hit my face, cold, real. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One line, with a photo file attached. "Want the full truth? Look at this, and don't trust her." I stood under the cafe awning, rain striking the sidewalk in a steady rhythm, like the ticking of a clock. Each drop a reminder that time waits for no one, and that it never erases what's already been done. I opened the photo file from the unknown number. The title trembled on my screen. Supplementary Evidence, Case of 2002. Right below it, my father's name, framed by a faded red stamp. The image was cut halfway. Another message followed. "There's more? Meet me. Alone. 9 p. Me. Tomorrow. Bring his watch." I closed the phone. My father's watch had been in my desk drawer for 10 years. I hadn't worn it since the day he died. When I got home, Emily was fast asleep. I sat by her bed, listening to her slow, steady breathing, the only peaceful song left in my life. I brushed her hair back, remembering the way my father used to do for me when I was a boy. Down in the kitchen, I made coffee. Black water poured into the cup, steam curling upward. I watched the wall clock hands move, each tick, tock, loud in the quiet house. Each tick was a choice I hadn't made, a question I hadn't answered. I thought back to the night I proposed to Laura in the park. We sat on a wooden bench, eating greasy fries straight from the paper. She laughed like the world was simple, and I believed it was. Now I knew, what we think will last forever sometimes is only a beautiful moment, worn down by secrets and silence. I opened the desk drawer. My father's watch lay there, frozen at 11:47, the minute he took his last breath. I picked it up. Cold metal seeped into my hand. Then my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Just one line. "If you don't come, someone else will." I looked at the watch, then toward Emily's bedroom. Two fears rose in me at once. Fear of the truth, and fear of never knowing it. I put the watch back in the drawer and slammed it shut. Poured more coffee into my cup. Outside, the rain had stopped. But the street was still wet, reflecting streetlights in unsteady gold streaks. Maybe I couldn't save this marriage, but I still had a family to protect, a past to understand, and a truth to find. I drained the cup. The bitterness slid down my throat, a reminder that some answers will never taste sweet. The clock kept ticking, but this time I wasn't sitting still.